Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we will be discussing PrEP and PrEP access with some phenomenal ladies here on today's panel. And today's webinar is brought to you by GLOW, which is Growing Leadership Opportunities for Women. It's a program that we offer here at MAC that gives women an opportunity to learn more about leadership and holistic health. Also, our 50 Plus program, which is MAC's 50 Plus and Strong and Healthy program, which trains participants to become leaders and advocates. Our 50 Plus scholars participate in a number of activities, such as webinars, mini grants, peer health trainings, and other leadership development opportunities. This webinar is also a part of the CDC, which is the CDC and Let's Stop HIV Together campaign, right? And MAC is proud to be working with the CDC, community-based organizations, and other trusted messengers to help share materials from the Let's Stop HIV Together campaign. And you can find out more at the cdc.gov/stop HIV together. So as I mentioned, I'm joined today by three phenomenal ladies by the name of Teresa Sullivan, Liliana Tolero, and Ashley Cobb. Teresa Sullivan is the Director of HIV Prevention and Education at Philadelphia Fight. Teresa has 15 years of experience in HIV prevention education. She was honored with the highest prestigious Red Ribbon Award in 2018 for her work in HIV activism and HIV education. As a community organizer for the Support Center Prison Advocacy, Teresa spearheads outreach into communities most impacted by the crisis of mass imprisonment and helps organize neighborhood level steering committees to help address their area specific reentry needs. Despite her busy life and being a great grandmother of two, Teresa works on her self-care. She believes in holistic wellness, mind, body, and spirit. And when it comes to her self-care, she practices meditation and has a healing temple to help with her healing process in life. Thank you for joining us, Teresa. Liliana Tolero, since immigrating to the United States from Colombia in 2010, Liliana has dedicated herself to working for organizations that support our community. Currently, she works as an HIV health counselor for the Shantai Project Women's Cancer Program. She has 12 years of experience participating as a volunteer and working for organizations who provide services to people with HIV/AIDS vulnerable populations both in Colombia and in San Francisco. Through this work, she thought she was helping others to heal, but she realized that she was healing herself. Thank you, Liliana. And Ashley. Ashley is a certified sex coach who describes herself as a millennial microphone for women of color seeking sexual liberation. Affectionately known as your favorite friend and fifth, Ashley is dedicated to bringing the conversation of Black sexuality to the forefront across generational lines. She is a women's health and sexuality writer, a media personality, and HIV activist known for her fun, um, for her fun, down to earth, and practical commentary. That's amazing, right? Ashley's mission is to get people comfortable talking about sex out loud. She's been featured in top media outlets, including Essence, Huffington Post, Cosmopolitan, Women's Health, and Self, and appeared on the Bravo TV show Love Match Atlanta. Ashley resides in Atlanta, Georgia, where she also works as an HIV advocate for Black women, including as a CDC community ambassador. And greetings, everyone. I'm Lauren Miller. I'm the Health Equity Coordinator here at MAC and the Center to End Epidemics. And I work very closely with the Elevate program as well as the GLOW program. I'm so honored to be a part of today's webinar with these phenomenal ladies. And we're going to get started with our conversation. So as we know, women have a lot to do every day, right? We know that, Ashley.
Yes.
Liliana, I'm pretty sure you're aware of that. What are some ways that you like to keep yourself feeling strong and healthy? I'm going to pass it to you, Ashley. What are some ways you like to keep yourself strong and healthy?
So self-care is very important to me because, like you said, women we have a lot on our plates. Usually, if we're not taking care of our kids, taking care of our partners, taking care of everybody else, and a lot of times us is last. We are last on our list. So for me, I got a hobby a year ago that I really love, and I really didn't think I was gonna like it. I go to the park and I bird watch.
Nice.
It's fun.
It is, and it's really relaxing, actually. Um, One of my friends is a photographer, a bird photographer, so I started going with him just to go, and like now I can identify some of the sounds and identify some of the birds. But it's really a relaxing to be out in nature and not really have to think about anything, just walking in the wild. So that's what I like to do to
That's
maintain.
amazing. I love the idea of bird watching, especially in Atlanta. I've definitely
Yeah.
done some bird watching in my time as well. Liliana, I'm going to pass the question to you as well. What are some ways that you like to keep yourself feeling strong and healthy?
I think she's frozen.
I think she's frozen.
She might have some technical difficulties. How about you, Teresa? What are some ways
Okay.
you stay strong and healthy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like Ashley said, that we wear so many hats, just as women, especially as Black women, right? We're taking care of everyone in our families, our friends, our partners. Our children. For me, it's my great grandchildren. I'm a great grandmother. One thing that I had to incorporate into my own self care, as you heard in my bio, I have a healing temple. Right, when I'm stressed out, I go to my healing temple, which is in the room I'm in now, right, and I meditate. I ring my bell. I take some time in the morning to meditate and to ground myself, right? So I
Mm.
don't bring any tension into the spaces that I take my body into. I also incorporated saying that my me time, which is my Sunday, has nothing to do with going to church or anything like that. It's just Teresa's me time. Don't call me, don't text me, don't email me, don't ask me to do anything. This is my time to decide what I want to do. And a lot of my networks and my closest friends know that. And I like to tell them, like, if it's an emergency, yes, okay, cool, family, all right. But no, let me to have my self me time, right? Because self care is important. I learned how to fish with my husband. We go fishing, right? And crabbing, right? Where I can just sit in a chair, throw a rod out into the water, don't have to think about, work or anything else that's going on in the political world that we live in, and just relax. I might not catch anything, right? But it's about just sitting there in that time to relax and do something that's not hard and not heavy lifting. And I enjoy spending time with my husband as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Teresa. And you brought up an interesting point. I have actually never caught a fish before. And growing up, my dad would tell me that means you're very unlucky. So if you don't catch a fish, you're unlucky like me. But Liliana, Teresa brought up an interesting point. Just want to make sure you're here with us as well. But she talked about the many hats that women wear. How do you manage some of those hats as a woman?
I think she's still frozen.
She was doing so well before we got on here. Sounds so.
Oh,
Right. Ashley, do you have any pointers for the women before we go to the next question? How do you manage those many hats that we wear?
I manage has so I'm a person who writes down. I have a planner,
Hmm.
and everything has to go in the planner. If it didn't go in the planner, it's not going to happen. So for me, how I manage all the things I have to do, I write things down. I look at my schedule every day, and then two in the beginning of the week, so I can kind of like know how to plan my week. That helps me not to get overwhelmed, and that helps me to keep a good grip on what I have to do.
yeah.
Yes, thank you for that, Ashley. Liliana, are you able to respond? I kind of see your cam going in and out right now. Okay, and that's fine if you can't. So this question is for either of you two. What
Mhm.
has your experience been taking treatments for PrEP?
Okay, so I'm on PrEP.
Okay.
And I've been on both. I've been on the daily oral, and I'm now currently on the long-acting injectable.
Nice.
So my experience has been a relatively positive one. The only, you know, you have side effects. Sometimes side effects vary from person to person. You know, I had like slight headaches when I first got on the daily oral. I will say for me though, the reason why I switched from a daily oral to the long-acting injectable is because I forget. And I don't like taking pills every day. So it was the adherence was an issue for me because, you know, life, I'm busy, and, you know, sometimes I just don't feel like taking a pill bottle everywhere I go. But I like it. It's been a very positive experience thus far.
Right, thank you. And you kind of brought up some of the thoughts that I had as well, like how has it made you feel mentally? And have you noticed any changes to your body? I think that's important for a lot of women to know. Did you notice any changes to your body with taking PrEP?
So I wrote on Instagram the other day, you know, part of what I do is I try to provide women, particularly Black women, with safer sex practices and things that pleasure, right? Pleasure and safer sex practices. So PrEP kind of feeds into both of those. And so I volunteered as tribute to get on PrEP, so that way more people who look like me can be like, okay, you know, this Black girl on PrEP. And like I said on Instagram, I was like, I have all my teeth. You know, I haven't gained any substantially weight. I was fat before PrEP, still fat. Nothing has changed. And you know, my coochie still works, right? It still works perfectly fine. Nothing has changed. That's important, right? Because we vain and we want to be able to still know, well, our sexual functions still work. Everything works. So like I said, I haven't had any negative like side effect. I like haven't gained weight. Cause I get that question a lot. Well, have you gained weight? Because you know, like back in the day when Depo was a thing, well, I mean, still a thing now, but like way back in the day when I was in high school, Depo, like the thing about Depo was you get a Depo and now you get fat, right? And nobody wanted to get fat. We didn't want to have babies, but we didn't want to get fat either. So yeah, so I have not had any like significant obvious changes. If they are, they're very in the school, and I don't notice them.
Right. Thank you, Ashley. And I know, Teresa, you work very close with our community of people living with HIV
Mhm.
in prevention as well as access to care and treatment. So what tips do you have for other women out there who might want to bring up questions about starting a new treatment or going on PrEP?
That's a great question. You know, I think that it's really important for people to do their research, right, and have open dialogues with the provider, right? A conversation with a provider will build a trusting relationship that you're getting the right information. But I also tell women, and you know, particularly women of color, not to just sit there and shake your head to everything. Right? Yes, yes. Don't be a yes and ask the patient. Ask those questions, and please write down questions when you go. Right? Because I tend to go to the doctor. If I don't write something down now, I might leave and not ask that question. Right? So it's important for people to like have the questions ready. If the question doesn't sound right, and if it doesn't fit into the reality of your life, please ask what are my options. We got so many options today for treatment and prevention. Unlike Ashley, I've been on treatment for 28 years, right? And as far as the body change is concerned, I know some belly fat, but I'm owning it because it's there, but I'm still sexy with it, right? At 61 years old, right? So I still find myself, I'm going sex positive. You know, I try to encourage women that, like Ashley said, yeah, the coochie hasn't changed. Just because you got an HIV diagnosis, your vagina has not morphed into anything different. Right? It is still the same. You have a condition that's in your blood that is treatable, right? And that it is no longer a destiny. We can live and have all our dreams and live our life on purpose today. So go out there and do that. But when you are thinking about switching treatment or getting on treatment for the first time, do some research, write down your questions, talk to your provider, and it could be a two-way conversation, right? If you don't understand something, tell them, I don't understand what you're saying to me. Please break that down in layman's terms where I can understand it. Right? Because I didn't go to medical school, right? So I need you to talk to me on my level, right? And then, like, there's never, ever a dumb question, right? When it comes to treatment and medication. I don't care what the treatment is for, because this is something that you put in your body. You want to know the side effects, long-term side effects. You want to know what there's studies on it before you got on it, and what was the outcome of those kind of things. So just be really informed when you go to get on treatment or change treatment.
Yes, thank you. That's amazing advice, Teresa. So Ashley, I have a question for you because I know that you give women advice on a lot of different subjects. What advice would you give to women who might be a little nervous about talking about this subject matter with their doctors?
So like Miss Teresa said, so I would say go in with questions. So I understand that sometimes when we with our primary care doctor, sometimes we're nervous. I have found though that if I go to a doctor, one who I have some type of rapport with, one that I've maybe been seeing for a while, one I feel comfortable with, I am more willing to ask questions. Like if it's a brand new doctor, I don't know you, you don't look like me, whatever that looks like, you don't understand whatever, because for me, I like black female doctors. If I can't get a black doctor, because I feel especially for like my female problems, like a gynecologist, I prefer a woman, because can nobody tell me about a vagina like a woman, right? Because you understand, even though a male doctor has gone to the same school, and they understand the thing, but you as a woman know what a vagina feels like because you got one, right? So I prefer ones who look like me and can identify with whatever my situation is. It's easier for me to open up and have a conversation. But if you bring questions, that could be a good way for you to also have the conversation. Okay, I want to talk about these, and that's a good way to already go in with the questions you want to ask.
Yes, thank you, Ashley, and thank you for giving us those pointers. And Teresa, just back to you for a second. I noticed in your bio when we talked at the beginning that it talked about you earning the highest prestigious Red Ribbon Award in 2018. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Oh wow, yeah. It was unexpected. Someone nominated me to get the Red Ribbon Award, which is a CFAR, Pennsylvania University Hospital research at the university here in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. It is given out to people who have done outstanding work in the community, whether it be HIV related, policy, and research. And when I got it, the announcement, I was like, "Oh, me?" Right? Because I'm being modest, and I'm like, I never thought I was going to get that. I didn't look to get that. I just do the work, right? Because this is what God charged me to do, and that's what I believe. And I lived that dream of just seeing another woman get to a place where she's okay, right? And then she started to cry, right? That she's not feeling that way I felt 28 years ago, really alone, right? And they gave me the award. It was wonderful. It's right in this room. It's heavy, right? But I felt so proud to receive it. But it's not my award. It's my community award, right? It belongs to my community. It really does. Because throughout my journey of all the years I've been doing this, I have seen women, men, and other people I have come in contact soar from the beginning of coming through my programs to beginning to live their lives and understanding what's going on with their bodies as they are living and thriving with HIV, right? Because we're more than just that. We are so many other things. I always tell people, never put your status before who you are. And I never introduce myself as I'm HIV. My name is Teresa Sullivan, right? I'm a Black woman, unapologetic for doing the work that I do, right? And I love my community. Put who you are first, and then because my HIV is over here, and I choose to tell it when I need to tell it, right? And it depends on my audience, right? Because I'm not gonna go to and talk about pet care about my HIV,
Right.
Right, exactly.
the pet care, right? So just know that there's so much more than just your status, and that award just like I said, it's just my community award for all the work, and it belongs to them. And not so much, it just lives with me. That's all in my house.
Well, thank you for all that amazing work that you've done over the years, Teresa, especially in Philadelphia and with Philadelphia Fight. We know that Philadelphia Fight has been one of the organizations that has been with us since the beginning of the pandemic. So thank you
Yes.
for continuing on with that legacy, with that amazing organization. And to you, Ashley, so in your bio, you talk about bringing the conversation of Black sexuality to the forefront across generational lines. What do you mean by that? What exactly does the conversation about Black sexuality have to do with generational lines, and why is it important today?
So what I have found, by being a Black woman, I've been Black my whole life, right? And so what I have found is that we as Black people don't talk about sex. Right? We just don't. Um, it is very taboo for us. It's something that you only talk about with the person you're having sex with, or you might talk about with your friends, but like it is very like we don't talk about it out loud. And so there was this study some years ago, and they found that people who talk about sex have better sex, right? And so I found that to be true. Like if we can just have the conversations about different things, you'll realize that one, whatever thing you is happening to you, you're not the only one. So you're not the only one who's not having an orgasm, quote unquote. You're not the only one who wants to try this thing. There are other people who look like you, who have the same issues or want to try the same thing you do. You don't know that because you don't talk about it. So it's like, right. And like when we have to also get out of this thing of thinking like certain types of sex is quote unquote like for the other white people or other people. No, sex is for everybody. Right. But again, we don't know that because we don't talk about like BDSM, for example. BDSM been around a long time, but like Black folk in the last, let's say 5-6 years, 10 years or so, last decade or so, are getting to the place where they want to explore and talking about it openly. They have like these little munches and groups and organizations where all these Black people are doing kink. Now, prior to that, we was like, no, we don't do that. That's not our thing, right? Like, I ain't doing that. But yeah, just creating conversations and being able to have conversations with people from all generations can open up people's world about sex. And then also let them know that they're not alone. Like I would like for it to get to the place where like people like, our grandmothers and our mothers can kind of tell like their daughters, well, this is what happens after 40, or this is what happens after 50 with your sex life. It may not, my sex drive shot up after when I got 45, like stuff like that, so people can be prepared. So hopefully that's what we'll get to. I mean, I know me and my mother won't ever get there, but hopefully other people, their parents.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that, Ashley, because that is sex is for everybody. Because it's like PrEP. PrEP is for everybody who wants it. So is sex, right? And, I'm like I said earlier. I'm 61 years young, right? And I'm married. And I've said I'm sex positive. And that I still find myself really sexy. I engage in my sex with my husband. It's positive. It's enjoyable. We talk about what we want, what we don't want, things like that. I'm that kind of grandmother that buried the grandson when my son told me he was having sex. Let's talk about condoms. Oh, grandma, we're having a conversation. You're gonna have that conversation with grandma because when I was having that conversation with you, right? And broke it down in a way to make him feel comfortable. Not to put him on the spot, because for our culture of Black people, a lot of stigmas and hangups about sex is still out there, right? That was culturally and generationally passed down to us. We don't talk about that in this household. We don't talk about it outside this household, right? And that like stuck us in a place where we didn't know about our own sexuality and about our own bodies because no one was telling us. It wasn't an open conversation at the dinner table. Right, when other cultures were doing that, right? So we got a lot of catch up to do, right? Talking about sex openly.
We do.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Teresa. That was really powerful. It really made me think when you think about those generational lines and also generational differences, right?
Mhm.
I'm 35. I just turned 35 in May, and I know you mentioned your age as well, Teresa. You also, Ashley. What generational differences do you see between now and 2023, where you see more sets on TV, you see it talked about in music and everywhere else? What generational differences do you see between now and maybe when you were younger or in your teens? And I'll let you start, Teresa.
Oh, wow. There was no when I was coming up. Actually, there was no the commercials that we have now that are really sex positive. Because when I was coming up as a teen, 14, 15, and being raised by my own grandmother, who had a different generation that raised her. So,
Mhm.
what she was taught, what she was trying to teach us. But being who I am, that's why I do this work. I ask questions, right? I seek out answers, right? If I didn't know none, I went to my older sister and asked, and because we all lived in a household together, I'm a sibling of 6 women and
Hmm.
1 boy, and my brother is the middle child, so he really, taught it from both ends, right, in the household. It's like it was non-existent. We didn't talk about it. You see a whole lot of commercials about PrEP or birth control, any of those things. I had to find out those things through a network of my own peers, right? Or I'll go to my older sister, to find out certain things. Because grandma wasn't telling me those things,
Mhm.
right? And um, it was a shock to even get my administration, right? And because no one told me this was going to happen to me, right? At 12. I actually was in a state of shock, like, oh my God, I'm dying, I'm bleeding. That should have never happened to no young girl, right?
Mhm.
She should be informed about what's going on with her body way ahead of time, right? But that's what happened when I was coming up. Fast forward to what I'm seeing now, I think we got a generation that is openly talking about sex and is openly talking about prevention and feeling free to have these conversations, right? And they're no longer are going to be accepting what the former generations accepted. They want to pave their own way about their sexuality, right? Which I'm super proud of, right? To see young people talking about it openly, not in like a little clique, 'cause when I was coming, we talked about it and giggled about it in the corner somewhere, after lunch, right? But now that we're like, hey, listen, we're talking about Facebook, Instagram, chat, and there's a lot of social media more now today where we can have those dialogues and having those groups of people talking about it, right? In a positive way.
And so I'm almost 40, right? So I'm from the Little Kim era. So you know, uh, so little Kim probably was. I say this saying all the time. Little Kim taught me. Little Kim was probably the person, first mainstream, probably female artist that I'm aware of in my generation. I know there's like Betty Wright and all them back in the day, um, who was very vocal about her sexual, desires and all these things. And like Mr. Teresa said, like my mother told me, like, when it came out for like birth control, like she was like, when my grandmother, they didn't have a conversation about sex, period, ever. Like no birth control, no nothing. And so like my mama, she wanted to do different differently. So I remember when I went to college, we had like a sex conversation, if you can call it that. And she was like, well, if you want to have sex, just let me know. I will ask you a question. I get your birth control. Because my mom didn't want no grandkids, right? So I remember when the time came, I'm like, okay, well, I think I want to, start doing this sex thing. So she did, took me to get birth control, and we didn't have a conversation about it. And that was the gist of my of my sex conversation with my mama. That was it. Um, but people can only give you what they have, right? I can only yeah, give you what I can only give you from what I had. So my grandmother didn't have a talk with my mama, so she was ill prepared and ill equipped to, because she
Mhm.
never had it. So I understand that now. I mean, I understand it then too. I understand that I understand that now from her situation. But I think now we have even though I'm from the Lil Kim era, like now, music and all stuff is a lot more graphic, and people are just, it's everywhere. It's everywhere now. And I think now, even with like the internet and all this stuff, like I think this is the first generation that has talked about, like, giving head publicly. Like there's people who on the internet who talk about giving head, right? On the internet, right? Which nothing wrong with it. Sometimes people ask me questions, I talk about it. But like it's on the internet all the time. Like in my mother's generation, that was not a thing. Right? In my grandma's generation, not a thing. I looked at my grandma and them like, like 2 generations ago, people didn't even admit they even were sucking penis. Like it wasn't even saying that they were even willing to admit they did, right? They're like, girl, I'll do that. That's nasty. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that's just 2 generations ago for me. So we've come a long way since the 1940s. And so yeah, we've come a long way. I think pop culture has helped in that progression. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley. And that was phenomenal because you brought up something that really made me think. You brought up those conversations from mother to daughter, right? And so I want to take this question as a twofold question. For you, Teresa, I want to know, what advice would you give mothers when talking to their daughters about HIV? And for you, Ashley, what advice would you give mothers when talking to their daughters about sex, sexuality, the liberation of sex as a woman as well? And I'll let you go first, Teresa.
Oh, yeah. So having that conversation can be really challenging if you don't have the good education yourself, right? The first thing I would tell women who are thinking about having that sex talk, especially talking about sexual transmitted diseases such as HIV, is to educate yourself first, right? Get the comprehensive information first. So when you relay that information to another person, such as your daughter, that you're giving her correct, comprehensive education, right? And one of the most important things for people to also do is like remove yourself out that space of stigma, right? Because we can always bring our own biases to a conversation. And it's really hard to have those conversations with your daughter about sex and, how to prevent them from getting HIV, excuse me. And if they are living with HIV, what about treatment? Like, if we don't remove our biases about how we feel about it and educate ourselves about it to get rid of those biases, you're not going to do a good job. You're just going to set it up worse for that person to feel about themselves and lower their self-esteem, right? And then we can lose some person through what I call the cracks of treatment and prevention, right? And that's what we don't want to do, right? We want to make sure that young women know about their bodies, know about what's out there and how to prevent it, right? Because the key is prevention, right? And education. Right. So I would say to women, if you're starting to have those conversations, whether it be about sex, whether it be about HIV, take the time to educate yourself first, right? Get all the information, the equipment that you need to have those conversations, and take yourself and your biases out of the equation, right? Because it's hard, because we all bring our biases no matter what, right? But it's a skill to how to take that bias and leave it at the door. Right? And come into a conversation like, okay, I'm gonna be open-minded, I'm gonna give all this information. Sometimes it's best for us to listen instead of talk, right? Listen to what the young person's saying to you, right? Because it's saying something in between that you're not listening to, right? And sometimes they just want to have a space where they can like be open and trusting that you will listen to them, right? That's another piece that you gotta make sure you do. Don't do all that talking. Don't be a know-it-all, because we're not. We're all teachable. Right? Even from our young daughters and sons, right? Remain teachable and open and listen to what they have to say. It's a two-way conversation. It ain't you just shoot all this information, do this and don't do this and do that, and hear this book and here read that. No, listen to what they have to say, right? Because what their voice is so important as they journey through this journey of sexuality, especially when we're talking about keeping them safe from contracting anything such as like HIV, right? So those advice I would give people if they want to have those conversations.
And to kind of piggyback what Mr. Rita said, leaving your biases at the door is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of parents like to keep, and I'm not a parent, so let me just say this. But I think a lot of parents like to keep their head in the sand And like we wish, right? Like I have niece and nephew. My brother has kids. And so I wish, like, in a perfect world, that they would wait to have sex, at least as an adult, not in high school or middle school, right? That's in the perfect world. But the reality is that people are having sex in middle school now, and they're having sex in high school. I had a friend when I was in 8th grade who got pregnant. That was the very first time I knew anybody to get pregnant. We were in 8th grade. And then I had several people, like, when we got to high school that had kids, right? So what we know is that people are having sex. So we have to get away from the abstinent approach. Like, even though that's good, abstinence is good. It's a good thing, right? You should only have sex when you're ready to have it. And when you're mature enough for all of the things that can go with consequences that can go with sex. But we also need to prepare them for, if they're going to have sex, how to do it safely, and how to do it, and how to prepare them, like, emotionally, if possible. Because when you have your head in the sand, you're not preparing them for anything. They're just getting their information from their friends, and their friends getting it from their big brother, their big sister, or what they see on TV. And as we know as adults, like with porn, it's not real life, and so kids don't know that because they're 17. Well, I was 17, I know nothing. Like, I thought I did, but I did, right? Yeah, I think if they had trusted adults who are willing to talk to them and tell them, like, if sex is a good thing, it's pleasurable. I had a parent actually DM me on Instagram. They were wanting to know, their daughter was 14, and their daughter wanted to use a vibrator, and she was like, what do I do? Do I get her a vibrator? And again, I can understand how that would kind of be like shocking for a parent. Like there's no way in hell I would tell my mom at 14 I need a vibrator, and that she would have bought it. Like, it's just, she was not. But I think that if the desire is already there and they're curious, by saying, like, there's people who believe that giving people condoms is telling them that it's okay to have sex. Like, okay, you're giving them permission to have sex. No, what I'm doing is, the interest is already there for most people. So I want them to do it in a safe way. Like, if the interest for your child already, if she already has sexual urges, maybe if she uses a vibrator, she might be less likely to go find a boy or a girl or whoever to do it in person. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like, now she's going to go find a person and start humping. That's not what that means. But I think if more parents looked at it that way, kids will probably be more willing to talk to their parents about it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always say, I give people tools, not rules, right? Here's some tools, right? You pull them out your bag when you need to use them. But I also want to just, put a focus on, for Black women, and especially young Black women, what really is consent? What is a healthy consent, right? When it comes to sex, and not making sure that we're not setting up young Black women, because 44% of Black African American women will fall into an intimate partner violence relationship, right? And we don't want to see that happen to our young Black women, right? So we need to tell them that piece too, about healthy relationships. What does that look like? What does that feel like, right? And like to make sure that they can like check those red flags when they're in a relationship, right? Is he not taking me away from my family and my friends? Is he asking where I'm going, what you doing all the time, right? I can't go nowhere without. Those are red flags, right? So we want to make sure that we are checking the red flag for young women, how to make sure they know about this, so they can do an inventory when they're going into a relationship. Is this a real healthy relationship, or I'm setting myself up for some problems? Right, that's another piece that we have to do for Black young women.
Right.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Teresa and Ashley. And one thing that you all brought up that was that really stuck out was the fact that support, right? Support from your parents. I think that's so important, especially as you're navigating sex as a young adult and you're making these decisions about your body and your sexuality and those different choices. Just having the support from your family. And speaking of support, just having support from community as well. So to you, Ashley, because we're about to wrap this conversation up. So I do want to get to these last two questions that we have. One of them is, well, they're actually both about PrEP and access to treatment for women. But I want to ask you specifically concerning PrEP is when do you disclose, right? When do you actually disclose that you're on PrEP or talk to your partner about the medications that you're taking? And what advice would you give women about when the right time is to disclose or if they should at all? And that's for you, Ashley. And Teresa, similar question as well, but mainly concerning discussing your HIV treatment and when to disclose your status. But I'll take it to you first, Ashley.
So I don't feel like people have to disclose their own PrEP or not. Like I don't feel like that's something that people have to know. Like I'm on, I don't tell everybody I'm engaging sexually with, I'm on birth control. Like I don't tell them that, and I'm on it. Like I don't be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm on birth control. I mean, if it comes up, a conversation comes up, but it's not a thing I lead with. I don't tell everybody I take blood pressure medicine. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't see a need to tell someone you're on PrEP. Now, for my case, me particularly, a lot of people already know that because I talk about it for work and they know I'm on it. But if they didn't know, like I don't tell people, oh yeah, by the way, you dating me, I'm on PrEP. Because it's none of your business. And I tell people one of the reasons why I like the long acting injectable is because it's very discreet, because you go to the clinic every other month, you go get your injection, and then you go home. With the daily oral, you have a pill bottle and pills you have to take. So that is less discreet, and people gonna be like, well, you don't pop pills every day. So like, you popped a pill yesterday and one day, like, what's wrong with you? Like people gonna ask you questions, right? That's just normal because people are curious and they just want to know. But if you are on like the long acting injectable, I don't see a reason why you need to tell anybody, honestly. Well, that's just me.
Yeah, so your disclosure is a real touchy subject around HIV, right? When to disclose, why you're disclosing, and who you're disclosing to, right? I'm sort of on the same wavelength as Ashley. It's personal. If I'm not having sex with you, there's no need for you to know, okay? I don't know if this relationship's going anywhere. That's not the first thing I'm gonna tell you about, right? And thank goodness for you, because you undetectable is untransmittable. When the CDC says that if a person has undetectable viral, they cannot transmit their HIV to another sexual partner, right? And if you are there, right, then there's no need. But that does not tell us to throw condoms to the sideway, because it doesn't stop from getting pregnant. It doesn't stop other STIs, right? So we want to make sure we have all those tools in our toolbox, right? But people need to make sure that they are disclosing safely, right? Because we've seen too many Black women who are living with HIV, especially women of trans experience, lose their lives, right, from disclosing their status. It wasn't so much about them being trans. It was about the HIV, right? In Georgia, and I think in Atlanta too, there was a young woman who lost her life, right, because she disclosed her status. Nothing was transmitted, right? And then we got to also think about HIV criminalization laws that are a thing, right? We just had a big conference in Virginia, HIV criminalization. I think it's the fifth time they did it, right? HIV is not a crime. It's in the name of the conference. That people are getting locked up not because they transmitted the virus, but expose people to it, right? And HIV criminalization laws are not based in science, right? It's just a thing that's happening in different states that were created back in the 90s, right? For white funding, basically. They are still on the books. Some states have removed them, and some states are still working to remove those outdated, stigmatizing language about transmission of HIV. We know that HIV cannot be transmitted through spit, biting, feces. Them things are nasty to put it on a person, and it depends on which way you're doing it too. Let's not get wrong, right? But they have those on the books, and people are seeing decades of being criminalized and in prison for it. right? So that's one of the things that I work on, to remove HIV criminalization laws from any state, especially my state. I might not have one. We have prevention laws, which are just as bad, right? Where we lock up people for decades. And especially for women, it can be a state that will follow you through your career. It chooses where you can have your kids go to school at, where you can live at, what job you can have. If you're thinking about going back to school and getting grants, you can be denied. All these things are set up, right? So we need to be real careful about who and when and why we disclose it, right? Even if you do have the you status, right? It's personal. You're gonna have those conversations. And if you are going to disclose, do it safely. And I always tell women, if you're in a relationship and it's not an abusive one, take your partner to your provider, right? Because they would document that. Teresa brought up her person here. We openly talked about her HIV, right? And it's documented just in case, because this is what happens in most of these cases. Happen is it not a breakup happens, you're angry, she didn't tell me she was living with HIV, I'm gonna prosecute it, depending on what state you live in, right? And that happens a lot of times. It just happened to some woman that I know in Pennsylvania a few years back, right? And it devastated her whole entire life. It was in the news, it was in the newspaper, right? So making sure that you are protecting yourself is to do those kind of things, right? So it can be documented, right? And it's done in a safe way. I always say do it in a safe way in case it goes south. I ain't gotta get up and leave, you do. So I'm sitting where I need to sit and in my feelings and deal with my feelings. Because, sometimes, just because we are disclosing our status and we think that people are going to be acceptable to it, that doesn't always go that way. There's always sometimes it's, thank you for telling me, but deuces. Sometimes it works that way. Sometimes it's really angry and bad words are being said to you, right? And you're feeling rejected. We don't want to set no one up for that kind of scenario. We want to keep people safe.
Thank you. And you really brought up some very interesting points, especially concerning women that are living with HIV and intimate partner violence and how those two correlate with each other. And I've definitely heard of situations in community where that has happened, where the partner will say, well, they didn't tell me that they were living with HIV, but also go as far as to stop their partner from being able to access their medications and different things like that. I do have a question in our chat, which asks about challenges in accessing your HIV treatment or PrEP. Was it difficult? And I'll pass this to you first, Ashley. Was it difficult to find a good provider who could answer your questions about PrEP and women getting on PrEP?
So yes and no. So because I work in the space of HIV and sexual wellness, I kind of knew where to go. However, when I was on the daily oral, I went to a clinic that someone I knew was going to. But when I wanted, so it's a PrEP HIV clinic. So like that's pretty much all they do. So you go in, do your little assessment, do your blood work, and you leave with pills that day. So, however, though, when I wanted to switch from the daily oral to a long-acting injectable, that's when the barriers came. A lot of people don't, from here where I live, a lot of people don't. Every clinic doesn't offer. Excuse me, I got a burp. Doesn't offer the injectable. So a lot of them will say they don't have that, and they don't offer it for whatever reason. They don't offer it. So I had to find someone who did, and there's a handful, literally probably like 4 or 5 that I know top of my head, that offer it. But the ones that do offer it, the interesting thing about it is they all are clinics that are women centered. So they're women-centered clinics in Atlanta, and those are the ones who offer Apretude, or the long-acting injectable. The other ones, it's a gazillion here in Atlanta, but they just did the daily oral. So yes. So yes and no.
So for me, because I've worked in the field and I've been here for a long time, it wasn't hard, right? Because I already knew people who were living with HIV when I was diagnosed. Did I have to change doctors throughout this journey? Absolutely. But because, you know, I try to advocate for myself in a medical setting, and I try to teach other people how to do that, it wasn't too difficult, right? Because I know how to say no. I'm not going to fit the reality of Teresa's life. Listen, I got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. No, right? What else? What is my options, right? For treatment, you know, and like Ashley, we now have injectables for HIV as well. And what I'm seeing is just it's a big amount of people saying, "What is it? Is it for me?" Sometimes it's not for everybody, right? Because you got to fit some criteria, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, I really like that. I want to get on that." And I tell them I have those conversations with your doctor, right, to see if you fit all, you check all those boxes to get on the injectables for HIV, right? Because I think it's like twice a month, twice every 2 months. And that makes, especially for people who are pill burdened. I'm tired of taking pills. I just can't do that. I'm living in a situation where I really can't take pills because I didn't disclose, you know, because we got a lot of Black women living in shelters, right, living with HIV, right? And that might fit into the reality of their life, right? But for me, it was easy, but that journey has been a long one, from being able to take one pill a day today to where I was taking 16 pills twice a day, right? Because this is way before what we call combination and combo. That means, you know, 2 or 3 medicines in one pill. Every medicine was its own medicine. It had horrific side effects, and I cried at my table saying, "I can't do this. This is really hard," right? And I took a chance, you know, at that time. This is like back in the early 90s when I was diagnosed. Like, listen, I'm gonna wait, keep my fingers on the pulse, see what else you got, what you come up with. And they finally came up with the PI protease inhibitors, and then I got back on treatment, right? But in the beginning, it was AZT. It was horrible. It was not that it was a bad drug. We didn't know how to dose it. We didn't know how to treat the side effects, and it was killing our people, right? And causing so many side effects and making the body, other organs, you know, affecting like your liver and your kidneys and stuff like that. And it was hard, right? But today, fast forward, you know, treatment's easy. I don't even think about it no more. I know after I take a shower, I pop this pill, I'm good, right? So it's like a one pill thing, right? And for some people, it's that shot every 2 months, right? So we have a big, and I'm thankful, as no one else is, that the advancements in medications have come a long way for HIV, right? And that people can feel more comfortable about taking the medication with less side effects, and it helps with disclosure too, right? If you're doing it in, you know, less pills, or you're doing an injectable, all your business ain't everybody's business, right? You know, we're talking about your health, right? And that's personal, right? Unless you are willing to have a conversation with somebody, but ask yourself why before you do so.
Thank you. And I definitely want to echo that, Teresa. You know, before you have that conversation with someone, ask yourself why. You know, and I think that's so important. You know, I often like to give to people who are who find out that they have newly acquired HIV, to give yourself a year. You know, really find out if it's something that you want to discuss with folks. Because it's something about when you get on that medication, after about 15 to 21 days, you become undetectable. You start looking good, feeling good, and you having a good relationship with your doctor. You're going getting that blood work, and it's all coming back, you know, A-okay. I have seen, you know, both sides of the coin where folks have disclosed and haven't been as successful with their treatment. But I've noticed that when people don't disclose, or they kind of, you know, don't tell their status of folks, they normally have very successful outcomes. And this is something that I've witnessed visually in community. Well, y'all, we are wrapping up our conversation, but before we do, I want to just pass it to our Director of Communications, Chip, just to let us know if we have any questions in our live Q&A.
We have one right now. Before we start on that, just want to let you know that Liliana lost her connection, which is why she had to drop off, but she apologizes for not being able to finish the webinar. We just want everyone to know that she had technical difficulties, and she apologizes for not being here. So the question we have for Teresa, when when you were first diagnosed, what services were offered to you back in the day compared to today?
Oh man, oh that's a great question. So I'll share my diagnosis date, right? It was 1996. It might have happened the year before, but I didn't seek treatment, right? But when I actually got the actual diagnosis was in 96, right? And I wasn't offered anything. I was offered a test. I took it, forgot I took it, went back and got the results, and like, no, that can't be. Right? Do it again. Right? Do it again. Right? And being told back then we did what we call the Western blot. I mean, they drew your blood, they sent it to the lab, they tested 3 times in the lab. It wasn't an oral swipe like we have today, right? And they're like, yeah, and if it wasn't for me being connected, to my own family with my sister, who also was a woman living with HIV, I told her first, right? And she went and took me to a place called here in Philadelphia called We the People, right? And that's my first connection to finding out about how to live and what was going on with my body and why treatment is important for me to take, and that it wasn't going to be a death sentence. You're going to be okay. Here's a network of people. You can cry on this shoulder as long as you want to cry on it. You need some resources, you need some housing, you need some clothes, you need some food. What do you need? We are here to help you, right? And that was the first connection I had in Philadelphia through my own sister who had lost her fight back in 2005 to complications of an AIDS diagnosis, but her spirit still lives within me. We the People's no longer here in Philly, but if it wasn't for We the People, I would not have been connected to Philadelphia Fight where I work at, right? And doing the work that I do today. Dots are made and connected in a reason that sometimes we don't know why, right? And it happened. I grew strong. I got on treatment. I got connected to a doctor. I got housing, which was really important. That's for people living with HIV. Housing is healthcare. I needed a roof over my head. It was stable and affordable, where I can lay my head, take my meds, and not be out in the street and not couch surfing or going here and there, to survive, right? So that was important for me to have was housing. Like I said, housing is healthcare, especially for anyone. I don't care if you're positive or not, right? We do better when we're housed, right? In affordable housing. And we put that emphasis on there, that affordable housing, right? Because some housing is not affordable, right? You want to in a trap, right? So that's one of the other hats that I wear. But it was We the People that really, and I keep saying We the People because it felt like community. And that's the actual name of the place, We the People. I went there, I sat in classes, I learned about, what HIV was. I had no clue, even though my sister and I had a cousin prior to that in the 80s who had lost his fight to complications. And I really didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know what was going on with me and I needed to educate myself. So I sat in classes, I found out what was going on, how I can get on medications, how I can connect it to a doctor, and resources are really important. So that was my first connection when I was diagnosed in the 90s.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Teresa. And I know that back then, there was a heavy focus on finding out how to make sure that the women who were living with HIV wouldn't pass HIV on to their children. And we do see that some new medication advancements came out around that time as well that helped us out in being able to make sure that that didn't occur. All
Yeah.
right, well, y'all, that really wraps up our panel for today. Thank you for joining us, Teresa and Ashley. And we're so sorry that we lost Liliana and those technical difficulties. But before we go, just to remind you all that today's webinar was brought to us by GLOW, which is Growing Leadership Opportunities for Women. It is a leadership program offered here at NMAC that teaches women about holistic health and ways to become leaders in their community. Our 50 Plus program, which is MX 50 Plus Strong and Healthy, program which trains participants to become leaders and advocates for our 50+ community. And most importantly, today's event is a part of MAC's partnership with the CDC PEP program. MAC is proud to be working with the CDC, community-based organizations, and other trusted messengers to help share materials from the Let's Stop HIV Together campaign. And you can find out more about that at the cdc.gov/stop-HIV-together. This was wonderful. Teresa and Ashley and all our folks behind the scenes that helped make this happen. Thank you all for joining our webinar, and we will see you all again soon at USCHA.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
You too.